So we scuffed them in, put the drums on, bled the brakes until we had no air coming out at all anywhere. Couldn't get a pedal. Welcome to the Union Jack Classics. Now it seems in recent times I've been getting a lot of these what I call laundry list projects, where the owner comes in with a laundry list of stuff that needs to be done to it. And in a case of like this one, there's usually a lot of mucking around under the previous owner. It needs to be undone, and that stuff just takes time. And these cars, while they make good videos, do end up hanging around the shop for a little bit too long. And I've been wanting lately to just get some just straight, easy mechanical jobs in, like, you know, put an alternator on, or, you know, go through a set of carbs or rear wheel cylinders, something like that. Something you can just get it in, get it done, and get it out. Well, this car was supposed to be just one of those projects. We got it in, but getting it done and getting it out's turning out to be a whole nother issue. Of course, yeah, that's the life of a British car mechanic these days. A little bit of backstory about how this car ended up here for the work is the owner of this car had actually had a bit of a running issue where it started running rough. And if I remember correctly, I think he initially looked at the carbs. Of course, doesn't everybody? Turned out it was a ignition problem. The points, even though he had a good set of points in there, they went nuclear and melted the whole contact right off the end of the wiper arm, which is a bit of an unusual thing, but it happened. Though, surprisingly enough, it still ran, just not great. So his son and him dove into it. They put a new set of points in it, put the distributor back in, timed it, I think tweaked on the carbs maybe again, and got it up and running. But he said it wasn't just quite right. So we brought it by the shop here to have me just double check things, go over it, make sure the timing was good, tweak on the carbs, whatever. And while I was under the bonnet looking at it, he mentioned to me that he was losing a little bit of fluid out of the left rear, and he thought he had a bad wheel seal. So while I'm under the bonnet, I looked at the master cylinder and seen that the rear reservoir was a little low on fluid. I said, well, I think you actually have a bad wheel cylinder, but for reasons that I don't remember right off the top of my head right now, there was no way that was going to happen on that day. So we topped off the master cylinder and scheduled it back in, and here it is. Now, regardless whether it was a wheel seal like he thought, wheel cylinder like I thought, or both, this still should have been a get it in, get it done, and get it out quick project, so much so that he was just going to wait on it. Well, car's still here, he's not. We first started on it, we got it up in the air, couldn't get the drums off of it. They're just really hard to get off. I mean, we got them off, but they were just hard to get off. And somewhere along the way, I was reminded that, yes, this car had had problems with that in the past. I'd done brakes on this like 8 years ago, which is why I figured should have been no problem. I know no one else has been mucking around in here and done anything weird. But we had trouble putting the drums on then, and it was brand new drums, I believe, that he supplied, that he had had laying around for several years. And we figured the real problem on them was probably that this inside here might have been machined a thousandths or two, whatever, too small, making them just a little too snug around here. And maybe even just the fact that these were painted was the problem. But we were able to deal with it. Everything was working fine, no problem. Now, another problem we had with these drums is they were actually a little bit too small across the dimension here. These are 10-inch brakes, so this drum should measure 10 inches. And these actually measured under 10 inches. Now, I ended up getting a new set of drums out off the shelf just to test fit because of I wanted to see how they fit on the hub to see if it fit in the same as this. And those turned out to be a little bit too small too, and we'll get to that here in a minute and show you show you measuring those. A lot of you already know, but some may not, that within the braking system, about 70% of the braking power comes from the front brakes and only about 30% from the rear. But when you're pressing on your pedal here, the pedal height and most of that feel is really coming from the rear brakes, not the front. So if your rear are out of adjustment, you will have a low pedal. Now, aside from a spongy pedal from air in the brakes, if you pump the pedal and a second time it gets higher, but it is a hard feel, then your rear brakes are just out of adjustment. The other problem we had here was there was a question mark on these drums because he had inadvertently left the handbrake on at one time and got them hot enough that he kind of not burnt the paint off the outside edges of them, but they didn't get so hot as to start making the wheel cylinders or the wheel seals actually leak then. It's been several years, but that has ended up causing us more problems, and we'll get to that in a minute. So once we got the drums off, pulled all the shoes off, yes, this wheel cylinder on this side was leaking. Now, I never thought if I was going to do a video on this. We just stuck into it, get it done. But now that we've had the problems we've had, we're doing a video. So we put wheel cylinders in it. And now this is a part that's going to be a little bit controversial for some people. When we do these things, when I do these things, I don't always replace the shoes automatically just because a little bit of brake fluid leaked out onto them. A lot of people will say, no, you absolutely have to change them. If brake fluid touched them, you got to change them. Well, I've been doing this for a long time, and brake shoes last way, way, way longer than wheel cylinders. Wheel cylinders will last generally about 5 years anymore. Somewhere around that neighborhood. These lasted 8. Now I usually do buy the Delphi ones, which is considered the OE ones now. And I figure if these things only last 5 or 6 years, then how bad can the aftermarket ones really be? I don't know. I don't use them. Now, if you had good luck with them, they've worked fine for you, let me know in the comments. But those are still priced pretty decent. They're not crazy, but the aftermarket ones are so cheap. It's like how good could they really be? But since you always have so much meat left on the shoes, and when people bring them to me, they just start leaking. As long as they haven't been overheated, or the brake fluid's been sitting on there for a long time, they won't penetrate into the shoe and generally don't cause any problems. I usually just take some sandpaper. I got airfile paper here that I usually have around because I used to do a lot of body work. I had a whole basket of this stuff that we would just deglaze drums with and deglaze shoes with when I'm just doing adjustments and stuff. But we go over it and sand it off, deglaze it till you see no more dark anymore, and then get in there and actually feel it. If it doesn't feel all gummy and it's nice and hard, doesn't feel soft or anything, they're almost always going to be just fine. And I've never had one come back on me as grabby brakes, squealing, or anything like that when I do that. So we went ahead and put everything back together, cleaned up the shoes real quick. They did feel a little bit on the soft side, but I didn't have a set of shoes sitting here at the moment because if you remember the younger guy with the 71 GT in red that you see on the channel fairly often, he had just picked up a set from me because his wheel cylinders went bad to where he had lost brake pedal, and he took a set with him just in case he decided that he needed the shoes when he was putting wheel cylinders in it, and he ended up going ahead and putting the shoes on and didn't bring them back. So I didn't have a set sitting here and couldn't get a set before this car showed up. So we scuffed them in, put the drums on, bled the brakes until we had no air coming out at all anywhere. Couldn't get a pedal. Now we were having trouble adjusting them. Now these drums could potentially be a little warped. We don't know without spinning them on a lathe or something to find out for sure. And I don't have anything I can spin them on. And that's another reason why I got the new drums out to check those. But remember, the brake shoes had been overheated a little bit. Well, it turns out they ended up getting a little gummy and causing us all kinds of troubles in trying to just adjust the brakes. Now, if you can't get a good brake adjustment, you will have a soft pedal, and it will take a pump or two to get it up to a full pedal. And warped drums can cause you to get bad brake adjustments, or soft gummy shoes will drag so much you just can't get a good brake adjustment, and they got to push out and take up that space before you get a pedal, and that'll give you a soft brake pedal, but it'll build up. So many of you may already know, and some may not, that the majority of your braking power, about 70%, is actually coming from the front brakes, not the rear. But when you're pushing on the pedal there, most of that feel and the height actually comes from the rear, and the adjustment is critical to get good pedal feel. What we were getting here was actually a symptom I'd never quite seen before. No air at all coming out anywhere. The drums felt really tight. First hit of the pedal, the low pressure light would come on the dash. And then 2 more pumps, you had a full pedal, which would tell me like I was way out of adjustment. Well, at the end of the day, he ended up saying, look, my son's got a set of brand new brake shoes, old stock brake shoes sitting in his garage. I'll bring them to you and we'll put those on, since I didn't have a set sitting here. And so he brought some old stock AP Lockheed shoes over, and that's what we got on here now. And he brought me a set of drums that were used that his son had as well. Now those drums ended up absolutely being warped. When they're warped, across the one way and versus another way, you'll have 2 different measurements instead of even measurement all the way around as you're checking it. But it won't be a huge difference in measurement. It could literally be 5,000 something to make a big difference. Now we'll go ahead and measure this one over on the bench while we measure the brand new one to show you what was going on with that as well. But you put this brake drum on here and see it's really loose right here. But then you turn it and it gets tight. And then it loosens up again. Well, that is because the short measurement is across here right now. Now we know where that is. It's going to be roughly right there and there. So we know that's probably the short measurement. So when it's there, it's free. When that gets over here, it's tight. Let's go over there and we'll measure these things and show you. So we'll start with the new drum. This is a brand new drum. I bought this, I don't even know when I bought this, 1 year, 2 years ago, something like that. It's been on my shelf for a little while, long enough that I can't return it. But this is a classic gold from Moss. And just like the other drum, which was bought 10 years ago, it's too small. Now it should be 10 inches across. Now I've got a set of dial calipers here. Now these are Mitutoyos. It's a really good brand name. These are good, expensive calipers, but they're not digital. But we measure this here, and you measure it till you get the widest measurement. And you tell right there, that's 9 inches, 990 thousandths, which means it's 10 thousandths too small, which means this would have to be turned and have 5 thousandths taken out of it to be the right dimension. So here's the warped brake drum. I have not measured this yet, but you'll have to measure it in many places to know for sure. But we are at 10 045 this way. 045. Oh, still showing 045. 50, almost 50. So we're seeing about, and just measuring it like this, which isn't the most accurate way of doing it, we're seeing about roughly a 5/1000th difference in measurement. Now, warp drums sometimes crops up on brand new stuff. Now, when you're storing a drum, always store it flat, either this way or this way. Never turn it up and leave it sit like this, ever. Because that can warp a drum when it's sitting like this in storage for a little while. They'll actually relax down a little bit and become oblong shaped. We've seen that at part stores a number of times over the years when you get a new manager who's just a manager, doesn't know about cars, and they think they can save space by stacking rotors and drums on end on the shelf rather than storing them flat. So now we're playing between 3 sets of drums, trying to see what will work, and a new set of shoes. But these shoes here are old stock shoes. I'm not sure how old they are. Obviously it's a older box, but these are not perfectly smooth. There's warping, there's a little bit of warpage this way within the shoe, which can cause a lot of problems adjusting them too. See if I can get the camera in an angle for you to see, because we put it on here, try to get adjustment, go take it for a quick test drive, come back, pull the drum off and see where the wear patterns are, and I'm getting not smooth wear patterns. Okay, so if you look at that, you'll see like it's touching the drum a little bit right here, and a little bit right here, a little bit right here, but not so much in between these spots here. That can cause actually a bit of a soft brake pedal, because the shoe has to conform to the brake pedal with the pressures, and these will touch first, and then those will compress, and then these actually never really touch. But we're getting that in a number of places. And in this case, we got some on this outer edge here. So it could potentially also be that the drums aren't quite even across. They could be narrower deep in here and wider out here. So we kind of need to get the drums and spin them on a lathe and get them touched up really lightly just to make sure they're nice and square and round. Now, when these things go the way they should go, you can just put them on there and just turn them up until the adjustment stops wanting to adjust and it doesn't turn anymore, and then back off one, and then it should feel okay, maybe a slight drag, and from there, let the shoes bed in, and then you'll probably need to adjust it again after, say, 100 miles or something, maybe one more click, and it'll be good. Now, one of the things we have noticed has been relatively common in the last 10 years. Put a brand new set of shoes on, and the shoes can be a little on the thick side, and the drum is really tight to get on. And if you have especially a brand new set of drums that's maybe 10,000ths undersized, they won't go on at all. So that has actually been fairly common for a while. And then you have to kind of bed them in, bracket off all the way, get them on there, and then bed them in and work your way up to the adjustment. But sometimes you'll end up scuffing them a little bit just to get the drum on. So yeah, that's the classic car hobby these days. Parts are just never quite perfect anymore, and you gotta play with them. You gotta sometimes tweak them and work with them, and they don't just go and work exactly like they're supposed to all the time. So we did go ahead and have the drums turned. Now it seems to be getting a little bit more difficult to actually get drums turned anymore. I don't know if there's anybody even in my town that's turning them anymore. The first place I took it to said they didn't even have the tooling to do drums, only discs. Since disc brakes are becoming so prevalent and standard equipment to even have rear disc brakes on most new cars, they're just not seeing drums very often anymore. So yeah, it's getting a little bit more difficult. Now the place we ended up having it done at, they didn't tell me exactly whether they were a little out of round. They didn't feel out of round spinning them, or if it was, you know, tighter in here than out here, but they said it definitely did need turn and trued up. So now that we got these all trued up, should be able to put these on there, get a final adjustment, and get this car finished up.